Now, Donald Trump has proposed 3.5% tax on remittances. That is money sent to immigrants in the U.S. to their families back home, wherever home is. And this, experts have actually said, could hit many African economies hard. For millions of families, these transfers cover everyday essentials like food, school fees, and healthcare. But in some countries, remittances make up a huge chunk of the economy, sometimes more than 20% of GDP. Now, imagine cutting into that particular flow with the tax. It could even mean less money for families, weaker currencies, and also slower economic growth across the continent. The policy wouldn't just affect people overseas, it will also squeeze immigrants in the U.S., many of whom already pay taxes and support relatives back home. Some may even stop sending money altogether or even turn to informal channels, making it harder to track and regulate the flow. So it's the kind of policy that sounds small on paper, but could ripple out in big, damaging ways. So the big question here is, if remittances are often more reliable than foreign aid or investment, is taxing them really worth the cost to families and economies on both sides of the ocean? Today on the show, I'm joined by two gentlemen, Professor Jalili Adebiyi, development scholar, practitioner in Michigan, United States, and also Abraham Great will be joining us later. He's a public affairs analyst in Ottawa, Canada. But we also have Bamidele Ayemibo. He's lead consultant, 3T Impacts Consulting in Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on.
If you can hear me
today.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
All right, so let me just go ahead and begin with you, Professor Adebiyi. Now, remittances to Africa were around $84 billion. That's in 2020. How would a 3.5 to 5% remittance tax really hit Africans abroad sending money home?
And honestly, when this conversation about the tax bill that is under consideration, that is still under consideration, was proposed by President Trump, I recall talking to my student about the implications of this, because it's one of those things that I teach under development. And what I made them understand is that it's not going to have a lot of impact on Africans or people that are living in the diaspora that are non-US citizens. I think it's going to have a lot of impact on their countries. It's going to have a lot of impact on their relative family members, and it's going to have a lot of impact on the economies of the country from which they come from. And it's so simple. And the reason is because, for example, when you look at remittance flows into African countries, especially in 2024, it was more than $92 billion. Yeah, and that's a huge amount of money. And the most of this money actually came from the United States. And that was about, if I'm not mistaken, around $30 billion in 2024 or $12 billion, something around that rate, between $12 billion to $13 billion. And the other significant implication of this is that we need to also know that the United States is the source of most remittances to most parts of the world, accounting for about $700 billion or $650 or $60 billion in 2023. That means that the US is a significant source of financing and funding development and basic livelihood need in many developing countries. And that's something to pay a lot of attention to. The other reason why this particular discussion is important is that there is what we call financing development. And when we talk about financing development, there are several mechanisms through which you can finance development. One is through what we call foreign direct investment. You can also finance development by going to private lenders, by going to institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, even by going to countries in the developed world to seek loan to finance development. That used to be a major source of financing development in many developing countries. and it used to be one of the largest sources of external fund flow into developing countries in Africa. But guess what? Remittances have challenged this narrative because remittances now constitute the largest external financial flow into African countries. There are no bottlenecks or administrative encumbrances associated or cost with remittance funds before they get to the people that are in need of it.
Absolutely.
What that means is that remittances are a massive part of funding development in many developing countries in Africa. So with this task that is expected to be introduced, of course, people are still critiquing it, people are still fighting against it. There is a likelihood that this is going to have profound negative development on economic growth.
All right, now just before you go ahead, Professor Adebi, now let's hear from Bamidele. Now let's hear from you. What impact will this levy have on top of African economies?
The impact is going to be far-reaching on African economy. Typically for many countries in the world, particularly developing country, you look at different ways you receive FX, considering the fact that you need a lot of FX to be able to fund your import of goods and services, which is critical for your development. Typically from trading goods, trading services, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and remittances. These remittances now is being cut, is going to be reduced significantly. And like you said in your preview to this program, the fact that it's going to have significant impact on the African countries. The families who depend on this, it's likely individuals sending money will likely send what they are still sending. They will just see a reduction in it because if they already plan their finances, look, it's going to send maybe a $500 or $200 or $100 every month. It can still choose to send the $200 he's sending or $300 he's sending, and then they deduct this from it. So at the end of the day, like the other panelists mentioned, is going to be affecting the people back at home, which is for me is a wake-up call. Sometimes we talk a lot about the fact that, we have our people abroad, a lot of remittances coming in, and it's helping the economy, which is good. But the question is, how do you rely on what someone is sending to you for the development of your economy? Whereas out of the major way of generating forex to be able to fund your import bill, both for goods and services, trading goods, trading services, this foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, and remittances is only trading goods and trading services you have control over. Because in that is when you decide you want to trade and generate forex. But in the other ones, someone will decide if he's going to invest in your country, either foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment, even though we go abroad for road shows, trying to get people to come in. If we don't put the right things in place, we don't do what we need to do to make them safe, they won't come in. And then remittances is when they have the money, they will be able to remit. And now that they have to pay tax on it, just like the prof said, it's not likely to affect them in America. It's likely to affect us here because they're likely going to send the same amount they are sending and transfer the charges to those that are receiving.
Well, there was a question you asked. You said, how do you rely on remittances for the development of your economy? And I wish, Prof could actually answer that.
Yeah, that's an intelligent question. How could a country depend on remittances, to fund development and attend to basic needs? And the question is asking us to look inward, to fix whatever is wrong with our economy, to fix whatever is wrong with our leadership. And I think it's a critical question that we shouldn't run away from. Because if the situations of things are really great in Nigeria, people won't be running out of the country, seeking greener pastures abroad. Of course, people moving abroad is an age-long thing and it's going to continue to the end of time. But we've gotten to a stage whereby for people to stay afloat in Nigeria, especially people that are from low-income households that have people abroad, it's a major source of attending to their basic livelihood need. When you look at the remittances are helping people to pay for their school fees, the school fees of their family members, the school fees of their neighbors, the school fees of their friends and the school fees of those that are even like members of their parents' church or mosque, congregation is doing a lot of things in that area. Why? Because the situation at home is making it difficult for parents and those who ordinarily were meant to be in charge of this responsibility to do the needful. And the other reason is because of the economy. When you look at $100, around 65,000 naira in Nigeria, that could pay for the school fees of his students in the university for 2 years in some of the Nigerian university, public university. That is a lot of money. And that is why we have been depending on these remittances. If parents are able to work gainfully and earn good income in Nigeria, they don't have to depend on remittances for them to be able to feel this responsibility. So the question that he raised about why do we need to depend on remittances is because of the abyssal condition of the economy in Nigeria that is causing this. And the current situation we are, I've spoken a lot about the current situation of economy in Nigeria under the presidency of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Things have gone gaga to absolute negative zero. The economic situation is so dear that many households that depends on remittances, they won't be able to do many. There are other things we need to bring in there now. People are looking at remittances. Worry about the fund that ordinarily were meant to support families in Nigeria through the USAID that were no longer in place. We lost about $178 million to funding cuts from USAID in just Nigeria alone. We are expected to lose about $250 million from remittances if the tax proposition by President Trump is approved. What that means is that we are going to be dealing with a multiple cuts in sources of fund coming into the country to assist people that are struggling economically. And that is why it is important for us to pay a lot of attention to the need for us to do things and get things right in the country. If we do things right, if we get things right, Nigeria doesn't need to be worried. The other critical space that I'm really, really worried about is the startup space in Nigeria. Our younger ones are doing great. They are doing marvelously well, raising funds from the diaspora to support startup, to incubate startup in the country. And that has been one of the major drivers of economic growth in the country that is assisting us to equalize the distribution, to massify the distribution of wealth. Now, with what is expected to happen, if this particular tax bill proposition is approved and it goes into effect, I anticipate that it's going to have a massive adverse negative consequences on the startup ecosystem, not just in Nigeria, but in Africa as a whole, without likely to have massive consequences on the venture capital funding that is available and that can be accessed by people to power the implementation of their noble ideas that can assist to expand the massification of economic prosperity in the continent. So that's another area we need to pay a lot of attention to. So by and large, I will just conclude by saying that African countries need to take the business of development seriously. Especially in Nigeria, whereby the leadership is irresponsible when it comes to driving authentic economic growth that can assist to put smiles in the face of the majority that are living in abject poverty.
Now, you did say that things are going gaga, and critics have also said that, this also means double taxation because the money is already taxed in the U.S., and being taxed again, how fair or even effective is that? Now, let's come back to you, Bamidele. You've heard all that Professor Adebi had to say, but at the moment, we know that the Naira is on the rise against the dollar. So can you tell us, in your view, is the Naira in trouble with this new tax?
Definitely. Like I said, you have the trading goods, trading services, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. we rely a lot on trading, on foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, when government is, most of the time, when, in fact, the government pride itself in how much FDI is able to bring in, and the fact that it's supporting Nigerians abroad to be able to bring in remittances. And the reason we are even having issue right now is because of the fact that we are not able to export crude oil as much as we should, because that's, I mean, over 90%, about my last check, between 85 and 90% of the FX inflow into Nigeria, trade in goods for Nigeria is mainly crude oil and gas. Crude oil and gas. So this is supposed to support it, increase the liquidity in the FX market to be able to strengthen the naira. Now, if this, number one, this will definitely reduce how much is coming in. If the people decide that they're going to send the same amount they are sending, and remember, these people, it's not like their earning is increasing like that, that they will just increase what they are spending. Yeah. So it's going to definitely reduce what we are going to be receiving if my postulation is right about the fact that they can still send the same amount they are sending and transfer the charges to whoever is the recipient. Now, the implication of that is we are not going to be receiving as much as we are receiving before. And we need as many effects as we can get right now coming into the economy to be able to strengthen the naira, because either you like it or not, every day we are expending, we are incurring expenses in effect, either for trading goods, imports of goods into the country, raw materials, manufactured goods and different machinery and the like, or services, for services that we're paying for, either technology or other services that we're paying for, which is, they usually will use Form A in Nigeria to be able to pay for that, and Form M for the trading goods. So whichever we look at it, this is going to definitely affect us, because we foresee a situation in which there will be a reduction in what is coming into Africa.
Okay. Now, let's come back to you and hear your thoughts on this also. If even a small slice of those dollars is chipped away, you know, what immediate shock would we see in Nigeria's foreign exchange reserves and government budgets? That's
it's very difficult to predict. Yeah, it's very difficult to predict now, because we can only know after the fact. And this is because there are many factors that might actually feed into this. And when we talk about remittances, you know, we need to put this into perspective. It is money meant for several purposes. A lot of the remittances getting into African countries now, they are now funding investment opportunity on the continent. Because many people, they realize that with their dollar amounts, they can actually invest in certain critical sectors of the economy in the country. And for them that are thinking of Nigeria as a country, as a retirement home, what that means is that if they want to retire back into the country around the age of 60 years, they have something they can retire into enough for them to live their life. For the people that fall in this scenario, I do not expect that remittance is going to qualitatively impact the amount of money that they are sending up. Mind you, the people that fall into this particular scenario, for the most part, they are those that are really earning well in several countries abroad. Because when we talk about diasporic community, we are not talking of a people that belongs to one class. We are talking about some of them earning as much as $500,000 per annum. We are talking about some earning as much as $250,000 per annum, some earning $400,000 per annum. And we are talking about those that are earning like $50,000 per annum, $60,000 per annum. So we can use one single narrative as a means of projecting into how this is going to affect the economy qualitatively. And that's why I'm going to be very careful in terms of the way I respond to this particular question. But by and large, based on my extensive conversation with French, who are in charge of the commanding height of the economy in Nigeria, they are projecting a massive adverse negative consequences, because the remittances that are coming into the country are a major sources of dollar in the Nigerian economy. So with that meaning that if there is an adverse negative impact on the amount that is sent back home, then we are going to be dealing with a major shortfall in the amount of dollar in the Nigerian economy. And that may further exacerbate the existing economic situation in the country. And that's a big one to watch out for. And the other thing that I'm also thinking that could be a major source of negative impact is that we are going to find more money in the black market versus in the regular market. And why is this so? So experiences have shown that every single time the cost of sending money abroad increases, people are likely to refer to the informal channel. Because when you live abroad, there are several mechanisms through which people send money back home. We have the formal mechanism. The formal mechanism exists in various forms. You could make use of, for example, Western Union for the transfer of money to Nigeria, to India, to any part of the world. That is prohibitively expensive. Now we have some new stakeholders, some new actors on the horizon, like SendWave that people are using to send money to countries in Nigeria, in the diaspora. And that gives them the leverage of sending money abroad with very little overhead. You see many people moving away now as a result of that from sources like the Western Union, moving to things like this SendWave as a means of sending money abroad. Then there is this third way you can send money abroad, informal systems. There are several informal systems that people could leverage to send money abroad. What I foresee is that there is going to be a likelihood of an increase in the amount of money that is sent abroad through the informal system. What that means is that Nigeria might lose the opportunity to earn some money as a country from what is getting into the country from remittances if you use informal abroad in the informal mechanism. Because I don't know about this informal mechanism, I don't do it, but from what I've heard from people who talk about it, it means that it's going to be off record. Whatever is off record means that Nigeria is going to be losing some money. And that is something that will increase the amount of dollar that we find in the black market economy in the country, in various African countries and in different parts of the world. That is not going to bode well for positive economic development. So we are beginning to see something that is going to have multi-scalar adverse consequences. And the other thing is going to this, when more people move to this scenario of using the informal sector, of sending money abroad, then that is going to reduce the amount of profit that the formal systems make from remittances. What would they do? Basic economics dictates that the formal system might increase the cost of sending money abroad. This has happened in the past. And the more they increase the cost of sending money abroad, is going to have consequences on the volume of money that is sent abroad and whether people will be willing to even travel out again to the United States. Because this can also have consequences on places that people elect to travel out to. If they feel that it's going to defeat one of the reasons why they're traveling abroad, they might begin to migrate into other countries. And that's another thing to pay some attention to. So there are many multiplier adverse consequences, reverse consequences that might arise as a result of the implementation of this policy.
All right, Professor. Now let's quickly hear from Bamidele just before we go on a quick break. Bamidele, some lawmakers are actually now talking about hiking the levy to as much as 15%. Now, if that higher rate were adopted, do we risk turning remittances corridor into economic minefields, especially for countries like Ghana and Uganda?
If you mean the lawmakers in the US now for the remittances or the fee charge in Africa?
The lawmakers in the US, and also if you could talk of, the fee charges in Africa as well.
For lawmakers in the US, it's going to be challenging. I don't see that passing, considering the fact that they are very much aware of what they often call black tax. They are the ones that call it black tax. The fact that, like the prof is saying, some people migrated to be able to make money to send back home. it will definitely affect the choice of country that people want to go to at the end of the day. I don't see that flying because it's going to be a tall order. Considering the fact that it's going to affect a lot of people and affect a lot of things that people want to do in terms of sending money back home. And it's going to affect a lot of African countries. In fact, that might be a reason why some people will not be able to send money back home again, because maybe at the end of the day, the money will not make sense if they are sending it home, unless they now increase the amount they're going to send. And if they are not earning so much or it's outside of their budget, they might not be able to, most people might not be able to afford increasing what they are remitting back home. And that might be a discouragement for other people coming to that country to come and work to be able to increase, so to be able to remit back at home, particularly for retirement benefit. Locally, it's a wake-up call. If that is happening abroad, it's a wake-up call. We just must do something. You know, like I said when we started, and you asked also about this question, why on earth should you rely on this? Because this, for me, is an indication that this should not be something. You know, in Nigeria, we celebrate it. As in, sometimes, you know, we celebrate the fact that, not that it's bad, but we see it like an achievement that people are sending money on. Whereas we can actually develop this place and increase what we get as a result of our own activity and use what is coming from our brothers and sisters abroad as additional, not relying on it as if, oh, we are getting a lot of remittances and they contribute a lot to the economy, and that seems to be an achievement. It shouldn't be an achievement for us. It should be an extra add-on because we are already doing a lot to be able to increase earnings. So for me, it's just a wake-up call that we definitely must do something. If we are not been taking it serious before, it's now time to take this very, very seriously about increasing our own revenue generation in terms of FX to be able to ensure it doesn't have a serious impact on the economy. Because if that happens, it's going to increase poverty in Africa, definitely. Because if the people spending money reduce what they are sending, it's going to affect a lot of people. It's going to affect businesses, for business they are investing in. It's going to affect individuals. It's going to affect family, probably even widen the poverty gap.
All right, Bamidele, please just hold that thought. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue from where you stopped. Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on the conversation. Now we're still talking about the 3.5 tax that has been placed on remittances coming from people in diaspora into Africa by the U.S. And we've been talking to Professor Delilia Debi and Bamidele Ayemibo. I'm told that we have Abraham Great at the moment. He's a public affairs analyst in Canada. Thank you for joining us, Abraham.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for coming late. I've just dropped into the UK right now.
It's a pleasure. All right, now let's continue with you, Bamidele. Before we went on a break, you were talking about, how it will affect, some countries, especially Ghana and Uganda. But on the flip side, the World Bank says that a 5% point cut in remittance fees could deliver an extra $20 billion a year in developing countries. Now, can you explain to us why then policymakers are even considering what critics, have actually called a super tax rather than slashing transaction costs?
The government of the U.S. is looking for different way of making more money. Remember the Liberation Day proclamation by the U.S. president, and he believes U.S. has been ripped off by many countries and looking for different ways of making money, and that probably explain the reason for the increase in tariff, which of course have been seen. There have been a lot of pushback, and now we have about 90 days time to negotiate and come back to the table. I think it's just in the same spirit and move of the U.S. president to be able to generate funds from every other channel that he believes they will be able to. And I think maybe a deliberate effort also to discourage immigrants. Remember also the crackdown in the U.S. on immigrants, the fact that they believe there are a lot of undocumented immigrants in the country and they are here to be able to make money. So if we are reducing the money they are making, maybe that will discourage them. Those are different things I foresee. The reason behind this why the government is doing, the U.S. government is doing this. And for us here back at home is for us to be able to get our ass together, like Ross said before, maybe to reduce how much people willing to go to that to the North America, Europe, and other parts of the world, just to be able to make ends meet because of the challenges we are facing back at home.
Okay. Now let's hear from Abraham. Great. Abraham, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Thank you again for having me, and I also greet other participants here. The way I look at it is that we have to study and understand the current American administration. If I'm going to give a word to describe the current administration, I'll say they are erratic. They're quite, in fact, they are hyper erratic. And most of their policy is based on emotional conundrums. There are so many things that this current American government are doing that is as a back end of so many things that have been done to the now president. So in a way, he's facing a situation where he's trying to carry out in this his last term, possible term, a form of retribution towards people that have hurt him, economies that have hurt him. But at the same time, he has an agenda. And that agenda is in his mind to clean up America in a way. So it is not trying to get rid of immigrants per se, but to get rid of immigrants that he perceives taint the image of America.
That's
in what
illegal
America
immigrants.
should be.
Illegal immigrants.
Not illegal immigrants per se. There are people within his own circle that probably enter America as illegal, including some will argue that even one of his wife or his current wife, even there are school of thought that believe that even Elon Musk at some point in his endeavor also may have overstayed his student visa also. So America is a country of immigrants. You've got to understand the nature of the erratic manner in which this president moves. And the countries that are wise, like the way China did, would have to take him on at the throat, or take the administration on by the throat and look, what is it that we can use as a bait to bring this president or this administration on the table? So when you look at this current proposal, the tax law, first of all, we all must remember that is yet to be enacted. This is not a law yet. But there are always innuendos around these administrations, and then they go forth to go and carry out. It's not just innuendos. That we've been talking about it, we mean it, we're going to do it. But this is a time to do what China did, similar to what South Africa did. The part of what South Africa did that I didn't like is the fact that he sat down there and the man is playing him a tape. But what the president of South Africa did, actually going forth to him and speaking to him and negotiating face to face, was a brilliant thing. What our leaders, particularly the Minister of Foreign Affairs, should be doing at this point is getting in touch with the stakeholders in America, the people around the president, people that actually are, the backbone of this kind of policy, and our foreign ministries should now begin to discuss as per our bilateral arrangements. That, look, we don't care what you want to do, but this is how it impacts our people. This is what we bring on the table. These remittances are not just beneficial to the people that are, sending money. It benefits the bank.
Everyone,
I give you an example. Largely, unless you're going through Hong Kong, largely most of the money that is moved around the world is moved through Citibank in terms of the SWIFT, the IBAN and SWIFT code. So most of the money that leaves America or go from anywhere in the world to anywhere go through American SWIFT. Do you know how much charges that American banks make by just being the correspondent bank? So in one nature, when this government, this Trump administration make policy, they make policy to me based on emotional cacophonies. But they don't really look at the intrinsic benefit or what the extrinsic benefit of the policy or what they're trying to tackle. And what we need to do is to bring them to the table and let them know that this thing is not just about what you're thinking. If all you are trying to look for is you are trying to find terrorists, you're trying to find people who are sending money abroad to fund terrorism, Here are measures we will put in place to be sure that the money that is being remitted into our country
Well,
is not for those
Abraham,
purposes.
speaking of that, some advisors have actually warned that some of these funds may simply shift to informal or crypto channels. Could it backfire by weakening formal systems?
I don't know if backfire is the right word. Number one is that we have to understand that crypto is here to stay. The future of transaction is more cryptic. It's more, crypto. That is why, you see, money is called for currency for a reason. We've gone from every form of trade, from trade by barter. Before trade by barter, people have traded with cowries and all kinds of things. And when you look at the history of money, you realize that the manner and the mannerism of transaction always flow and always evolve and always is iterative. So there is every sense and indication that the next 40 years, the world is moving towards crypto. So what is happening right now, I don't know if American current administrations understand it, that when they make such policy, it actually will expedite, enhance, and make crypto more powerful. Because people will find other means to transact. And when they do that, the blockchain dimension of transaction at the moment will make the law that they are proposing of non-effect, because people will still, transact.
Okay. Now let's come back to you, Professor Adebi. Now, Nigeria's central bank chief, has touted a diaspora bond, to tap remittance flow, aiming for $1 billion a month. Now, do you think that this prospect would strengthen the case for African owning their own funding instruments, or do you think that it will simply depress the overall pool of money available?
I think it's going to be something possible. But before I get into that, I want to issue some contrarian opinion about the thought expressed by Abraham, if I got the name right. And the thing is this, the responsibility of any president is to advance policies that they deem fit as imperative to foster and massify economic growth and development for the good of their people. So the President of America, first and foremost, the primacy of his concern are the people of the country. So if America put in place a policy, or if the President of the United States put in place a policy, what is the right of Nigeria to say that, that policy was not well intended? If the policy is going to bring money to the people of the United States, and that is why it is important for us to focus on what matters. The President of the U.S., to the best of his ability, and based on how he knows how to do things, or he thinks that he should do things, he feels that this is going to bring more money to the coffers of the United States. And by the way, you also need to know that the same president took out the funding of USAID for funding development, making an argument that that money is going to be used to address development issues in the country. What many people are not aware is this. The U.S. is facing a lot of development problems as well. We have the crisis of food insecurity in Nigeria. Millions of Americans are also facing the crisis of food insecurity. Not only that, when you look at the cost of accessing education in the United States, it's massive. Many Americans could not even afford the cost of acquiring quality education. And when you think about the issue of water justice, water access, there are millions of Americans without access to potable water, and can go on and on. The only difference is just the magnitude of the development challenges we are facing in Africa versus the magnitude and extent of who is affected and communities that are affected in the U.S. So meaning that the U.S. itself still have to address many and several development challenges. So if they put in place certain policies that will enable us to address this issue in the U.S., for one, I won't come out and say that that particular policy was not well thought out. Because when we think about the responsibility of a president, it's first and foremost to advance the good of their people. That said, I just wanted to put that on the table because we need to stop this slave mentality of going around to beg. It's one of the biggest crises we have in Africa. And I've seen many people, home and abroad, always coming with this beggar mentality. Let's go and kneel down, let's go and bow, let's go and prostrate, explain the vicissitudes of our people. Our people are poor because we chose to make them poor.
Okay, all right.
Our people are in a desperate situation because we looted them.
Let's quickly hear from Bamidele as well, Professor. Bamidele, you know, let's, from a diplomatic standpoint, how do you think that this policy, you know, how would this policy shift or even reshape U.S.-Africa relations in years to come?
You know, as it is right now, if what happened on Liberation Day is anything to go by, it doesn't appear that U.S. is really much interested in African relations with Africa right now. I don't think so. And the reason is simple, trade-wise, maybe for other reasons, minerals and some other, but for trade-wise, considering the fact that total trade of Africa to the U.S. is just about 40 billion, the total export of Africa to the U.S. And out of that, Nigeria is just about 10% of that. But when you look at U.S. import is over 3 trillion and export being almost 2 trillion. It doesn't appear to me as a priority for them unless they are going to use it to negotiate what they want. For example, when they gave Nigeria 14% tariff, and the U.S. gave Nigeria the tariff, one of the issues with some of the products that Nigeria has banned many years ago, since 2016, 17, the U.S. trade representative is bringing it up that they need Nigeria to do something about it. And for me, it was like many other African countries like Ghana having 10%, Nigeria was giving 14%, and I assumed that maybe that was supposed to be a negotiation to get Nigeria to probably come to table to discuss some of those products that U.S. want us to be able to align to Nigeria at probably duty-free or at a lower tariff rather than outright ban the way we have put it right now. So what I'm going to say is that I don't see it as very significant considering the real issue they are dealing with right now. And as a result of that, I would not, and I'm turning the line of Prof on this, that we should go and diplomacy, negotiate. What should we be relying on remittances? Should we be relying on remittances? Should we not have other important areas? We can make a lot of money from export of commodities, a lot of money from export of goods from Nigeria, and this can be done. They are already been done, by the way. Only that we need to increase the volume. For example, currently, because of the issue between U.S. and China, U.S. is a major exporter of soya beans to China. China imports about 60% of global soya beans import. About $100 billion, that's the market, that's the global demand. About 60% of that is China alone. Nigeria currently exports soya beans. So why can't we discuss with China to be able to have an agreement? China is building bridges in Nigeria. Why can't we negotiate with them to be able to also do trade with them and increase the production of these products in Nigeria, ship to China, generate forex? I'm saying from minerals to raw commodity to manufacture goods, if we're serious, we can generate these forex and we don't have to go and be negotiating that they should reduce whatever it is they are charging on remittance. Not to say it's not a good cause if it's something being done, but I feel we should be able to have control over our destiny rather than rely on someone to determine what become of us and then use that to control what they want us to do.
Okay. Now, let's finally hear from you, Abraham, on the diplomatic backlash that this could actually spark, because since Trump came into office, everyone agrees that, there have been some policies that do not favor Africa. And the recent one, aside this tax, was the fact that some African countries were blacklisted from entering the U.S. We know that Chad's president already even halted U.S. visa issuance. Could we see a broader Afro-American rupture?
Yeah, I would like to maintain that the current administration in America is erratic. I say that to their face. I was there last week, doing some business. I'll give you a very good example. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago? The policy in banning some some African countries. I think there were, is it 10 or 12 countries that were banned? There was mistake. To tell you how erratic and how unorganized the current administration is in America, there are two Congo. There is Congo Republic, which is Kinshasa, and there is Congo Brazzaville. The policy had banned Congo Brazzaville instead of Kinshasa. That's a typical example for you of what the real Congo that they want to ban is the main Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, that is just to tell you one of several things how erratic the current administration is. That does not mean that some of the policies that they are working on is not for the good of their people. But I have not seen enough to suggest that since this president came to power in America in January, that everything that they are doing, let me use the Yoruba word, about, that there has been direct proportionate effect on American people, because most of what have been fought for, even when they're trying to save money, maybe the money that they're sending to Africa is funding terrorism, we agree with all of that. The diversions of the money, and go and look at the budget, is mainly for pharmaceutical companies, is mainly for the people who are lobbyists. Well, I'm not saying like giving them to them like that. Most of the people that are still benefiting from what they're saving is they are the people that are close to the president. So it is not really for the American people, I say. And there is a part of the proverb, I believe it's Proverb 31, if you allow me to, where the Holy Scripture was talking about a wise woman or a prudent woman, a good woman, Proverb 31. There is something in that scripture that really means a lot to me when we're talking about bilateral relationship. He said, our husband will be known at the gate. What do people do at the gate? So we're not talking about going to countries to beg people. At the gate, the bilateral relationship between countries to country is the gate. It's not until we get to the border. So when we are negotiating tariffs, when we are negotiating tax laws, these are the elements of bilateral agreement. So, and this has been happening from what my Yoruba people call alayendaye, which is from the beginning of time between nations. These are the things that cause war. Don't think about it as when we're negotiating that we're begging. We don't need to beg anybody, but we got to be at the table. We got to be at the gate. We got to let those who are making policy that will affect our people. And look, no matter how much export, I have driven a lot of foreign direct investment. I run an event recently in China. I'm going back in 4 days to China again. We're bringing in as much foreign direct investment into Nigeria as possible. But no matter how much of that you do, any country that sends people, that asks people, like China, like Nigeria, like India, it's stupid. It is wrong of that country not to take diaspora remittances serious. Because if you have millions of your people in another country, like Nigeria does, like Israel does, like Philippines does, like India does, like China does, your people, and these are the middle class people. That is what makes the middle class of your economy. So speaking for them is not begging, it's speaking on their behalf.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Well said, Professor Delilia Debi, development scholar practitioner. We had Abraham Great as well, public affairs analyst, and also Bamidele Mibo, that's a lead consultant, 3T Impacts consultant. We appreciate you all for your time and for speaking on this.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.
And with that, we conclude today's episode of The Conversation. Do not forget to catch up on all missed episodes on our YouTube channel at News Central. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Darshan Usman.